Hey Abby, how's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm well. Happy 420. It's very exciting.
I know. I don't know what year 420 it is for me, but it seems like about 40 and 20 years. So yeah,
What
420.
what are your plans for
But
this year?
I don't even know. I'm gonna go to a clothing swap at the daycare in the morning, and then I'm gonna get a babysitter and probably smoke a butt ton of weed. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about Hotbox and some of your fondest 420 memories there. But just to get a background of how you got into cannabis, I know you've been in the space for like 20 plus years or whatever it's been,
Mhm.
and just where you're at now. And I know you also launched a brand recently, so I want to touch on that too. So I'll just pass it over to you.
Okay, so I don't know how much time we have, so I'm not gonna dwell on a gazillion years ago, but I essentially got my start as a teenager. I've always been really entrepreneurial. And my first company that I started, I was about 14, and I used to sell jewelry down on Queen West. If you're from Toronto, you would know it. And there I met all kinds of people from Paul McCartney's roadies and like bikers, like Hell's Angels. And then I actually met the people that owned a store called The Friendly Stranger. We used to vent together and they used to sell me hemp. And there was another woman that taught me how to make macrame. So I used to make hemp jewelry. And I did that for a long time on top of selling weed because I always sold weed. It was just something I loved to do. Got
Yeah.
into really enjoyed it. And I did that for, as long as I was a teenager, pretty much, up until I was about 19. And then when I was 20, I decided to do what I love. So I opened up a head shop,
Mm.
not realizing that it was totally illegal at the time to sell bongs, pipes, and rolling papers.
Yeah.
But who knew? But I did it. I opened it up in 2000. It was called Rotorama. And then in 2003, I evolved it into a place called the Hot Box. So we had Rotorama in the front, and then I had a lounge in the back. And I, not to go deep into it, but I kind of modeled it again, like when I was 16, I had a Christmas job at Chapters. If you're old enough to remember what the hell a Chapters was,
Oh
it's like
yeah.
Indigo before it was Indigo.
Yeah.
And they had a relationship with Starbucks. So I worked in like the business area. I don't know how I ended up there, probably because I was entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And I would watch people come in every day for their coffee. And then they would sit in the bookstore and they would pick up a book and read their coffee. And then they would always buy the book. So I was like, well, why can't what I'm doing now, my head shop, let me figure that part into
Yeah.
it. At the time, there was only one other lounge in Canada. It was called Blunt Brothers, and the medical system was just coming into play. With some court cases that had gone through, whatever else not. So I took a chance on it, and I did it. And I operated Hotbox first as a lounge and a store. And then I expanded it because I'm insane. I always say I'm insane. I'm like slightly mad, but we all are if we work in weed. And I expanded it into all kinds of like weird businesses that people are now are like, I want to do this. I'm like 20 years ago. So we had a guest house in Jamaica. It was the very first bed and breakfast in the world, probably with a tour company. It was called Hotbox Jamaica. I had a magazine that was called Spliff Magazine. It was kind of like a street meets like news meets like product. It was I called it like my penthouse for the Hotbox. Larry Flint used to come out with like Penthouse's originally a magazine that he did for his strip clubs where he showcased all the girls in the strip club and he gave it out for free.
Yeah,
So I kind of modeled after that.
for sure.
Yeah, we had an antique store that we sold like lifestyle products for potheads essentially. We had an ecom store eventually when that became a thing. We had a seed bank, we had a grow shop. I did all kinds of crazy stuff all under the banner of Hotbox, which was like so fun and so crazy and really hard. But we could never really sell weed, so we just did everything around it and just created a whole empire of like lifestyle.
Hmm.
Essentially, like how do we sell you stuff without selling you the actual thing while keeping that thing in the middle of the circle, like
Hmm.
you know what I mean? So that was the concept behind Hotbox, essentially utilizing the community that we built through the lounge to really have a community of customers that were
Mhm.
loyal as F. I don't want
Oh,
to
yeah.
swear on internet, but loyal as F. Like
Yeah.
people still like will follow me and do like buy what I do just because it's me and it's Hotbox, even though it's been like gone for so long.
Yeah.
And then, I did that for 20 years and just got kind of tired. I just wanted to do something else that was different and had an opportunity to sell the hot box. I sold it to the friendly stranger, funny enough, the people that got me started. And then I had an opportunity to go work for the Ontario Cannabis Store. They actually created a job for me. So they created a position that was I was like the senior product manager for merchandising. And my job was essentially to like figure out with the Ontario Cannabis Store how to get you as the consumer to want to buy legal weed through product assortment, through marketing, through just like how do we like have a conversation with the cannabis consumer to make them want to buy legal and have that conversion. So I did
Mhm.
a lot of work around like strategy, throughout the years, I worked on a lot of the programs that you see now,
Mhm.
Farmgate. I did flow through. I worked
Nice. Yeah.
around strategy around a lot of that. But and then I was also the buyer for three categories for quite a long time. So I purchased all the pre rolls, concentrates, and accessories for the province. So
So
it was
sick.
really great. I
Yeah.
got to like just meet everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like and really like see everything. So it was so exciting. And concentrates for me have always been something that I was really passionate about. Tell me if I'm going on and on and on, but it's a
No, I'm
long
enjoying
story.
it. I'm literally, as you're speaking to, I'm also going down memory lane of just like going into the friendly stranger as like a teen or
You
like,
could go on
hot box as
forever,
well,
but
like it's just
yeah,
amazing.
but
And then like bringing together that marketing that you have and this experience with like brand loyalty and connecting with the consumer,
yeah.
the OCS, like it's invaluable. It's so cool.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And when we were at the hot box, like we were at the heartbeat of everything that was happening because every drug dealer, every processor, everyone that was anyone in weed hung out at the hot box. That's
for
just
sure.
what it was,
Yeah,
right? Like I met the guy that like invented RSO, the dude that like invented BHO, like
yeah.
all these like acronyms, like I met them all. We had a terpene bar, cannabis terpene bar. We had the very first dab bar that was like we actually had like e-nails
Rigs.
set up and you could
Yeah.
like dab. We did all kinds of really cool, innovative stuff. So watching concentrates really grow and my knowledge of that segment that was like so underground and it was unlike anybody else's, so I could really manage that category. And my goal was to bring it from 2% sales mix up to like 12, same as the US. And with infused pre-rolls I managed to actually do that. After I went on my maternity leave, the woman that took over for me called me and said, we made it, we got 12%. Yes. So, it's really it's all about merchandising the end and what you put into the assortment.
Yeah.
And then I got an opportunity to go work for a company called Mira after my mat leave. That they have it quite heavily into like concentrates as well. I got to launch two of the brands that I came up with when I was on mat leave. I have like a book of brands that I created because I had nothing else to do except for do like a mini MBA and give birth to a baby. So I gave them two of my brands. I gave them a brand called Liddy and a brand called Greasy, and I developed those with them. And I believe now Greasy is like the number two like concentrate in Ontario pretty much, and Liddy is like selling really well. So good for them, and
Mm.
I'm glad they got to enjoy my fruit. And just with a kid and stuff, it was a little hectic. So I took a step back and now I just my day job. I just sell like thousands of kilos of fresh frozen weed to processors. So many of the people that I worked with during my OCS days, I'm now working with again on a very bottom up level. I have a consulting company called Dope Brands where I just support a lot of smaller companies and companies as well,
Yeah.
just to like be cool,
Mhm.
right? Like
Mhm.
how like do you like or how do you stay authentic
Yeah.
to who you are via your brand and your products, and helping them really come up with product roadmaps that make sense for
Yeah.
their company. I
Yeah.
always say if you're like a 50-year-old white guy, like you probably don't want to start like a woman's brand for like Gen Zers, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
What would be like a pointer for, keeping authentic?
speak to you,
Yeah.
right? Like, align obviously with your operational capability, right? Like if your specialty is outdoor, like don't try and do like a premium
Right.
indoor brand. You're not that's not you. Stick to your operational capability. But in terms of brand, stick to what you know, right?
Mhm.
Like find the demographic that you can relate to easily so your marketing is authentic, and make your brand story a part of the story. Like anything that I do, you hear it's me.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's an Abby thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm launching. I'm in the process of like phase one of launching one of my other maternity leave brands, which is called Jane Dope, and it's
Yes.
like my baby brand. So I'm very excited about it, and it's a brand geared for like women like me. I don't really use CBD. I don't really like low potency. Like I like doing dabs. I like really premium, expensive, fancy weed. I like innovation.
Yeah.
I like cool looking things. I shop at H&M and I wear like Chanel perfume,
Yeah.
right? So that's just who I am. So really it's geared towards like just empowered women. They most likely like live on their own or pay their part of the bills.
Yeah.
Like they take care of themselves. They don't need someone else to like take care of them, right? So I just want to empower women to just, like Jane Doe is traditionally essentially a dead woman who has no voice and no personality and no character, and is just like we don't talk about her, we don't know who she is, she's a Jane Doe.
Anonymous.
So
Yeah.
it's empowering women to step away from that and be Jane Dope and just be like super awesome, be themselves,
Yeah. I
and
love that.
loud and vibrant. That's what I'm up to, and that's how I got there in a nutshell.
So you just launched that like within the last couple weeks or something like that?
Yes, we did 3 weeks ago. So we have three phases. Well, I would say four phases coming, but we're
Yeah.
going to do one together of it. So the first phase is like essentially like apparel and knickknacks, lifestyle stuff. And what I'm doing is I'm doing like Jane Dopes of people. So you could send me in your description of who you see yourself as, what empowers you, and then your favorite colors. And I create sort of a Jane Dope version of you. It's not a photo, but it's just like what you would look like as this character, right? As this
Yeah.
empowered woman.
Yeah.
And then I stick you on clothes, on jackets, on like water bottles, whatever you like, and you can like be your own brand essentially. And then we have like fictional Jane Dopes as well, and it's very cool. It's a very cool concept. And then phase two is coming in the summer. We're going to be launching makeup. So it's
Nice.
going to be Jane Dope makeup. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty slick. So we'll have like just like weed themed makeup. So
Yeah.
lipsticks, eyeshadows, that kind of stuff, but like pink kush, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be good. I'm really excited about that. So Jane Dope makeup, we finished like formulating and everything. So now it's just
Nice.
like we're just working on the final design of the packaging.
Cool.
And then hopefully we'll have a perfume coming out eventually. And then we'll have a sub brand coming out as well called Herb, so HER.B, and that's our cannabis brand. So that will be coming out probably Ontario, Manitoba, and BC first. And we're hopefully going to be doing four SKUs out of that. And what I can't
Wow.
talk about it because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like kind of outside of the box.
Yeah.
It's like, but we're bringing some like innovation to market. Like I'm really passionate about moving things forward, right? I'm a product nerd.
Mm.
So I think you're gonna see some really fun stuff coming out from Jane Dope that's like you're gonna be like, what the is this?
I'm excited about it. It's
We'll
like
have
sounds like a
another
whole
interview.
yeah, it's a whole
Yeah.
ecosystem of products and stuff. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I wanna go back to our memory lane just discussion and some of your most valuable memories from 420 in Toronto and some of the
God,
people you met,
hell,
like
we could go
celebrities.
on forever.
I know. So
So
like, your favorites.
yeah. I did 420 at the Hot Box. every single year starting year 1. When we were just a tiny little shop in the middle of nowhere, I had, like, DJs set up on the street and did a little
What year
street
was that?
party
Would
at
that have been like 2002? Is that when you
like
opened?
2000.
2000, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it was a minute ago.
I
I am
love
aging myself quite heavily. It's okay. I am who I am. Yeah, so starting in 2000, and as we got the lounge, the parties got bigger and bigger, and we utilized like all the space that we had. So we would have like bands on the roof playing down. We would have like belly dancers in the middle of in the middle of the place. And 420 was just always a really special day, and it just grew so big. I remember at some point, um, the party got so big that we had to have a block party.
Yeah,
So we had our 2 storefronts. This would have been like 2015, I think it was. We did like the first block party. We did it every year after
yeah.
as well. So we had um, our main store, the second store, and then we would rent out this whole outdoor area. It was like a parking lot for moving trucks, and the moving trucks would move out for the day. And we literally would probably have about 2,000 people like come through the 3 doors. I
Yeah,
remember O. Henry, the chocolate bar, O.
yeah.
Henry, they did a 420 campaign for they I can't remember what the name of the bar was, but it was like geared towards stoners essentially, is like a munchie thing. So they rented out our secondary store for 421 a year, and we redid the entire store as a dispensary, but instead of weed, we had O. Henry bars inside of like big glass
Oh my
jars
god,
in
that's funny.
green packs, and we
Yeah.
gave them away. They had like Rottweilers to like sniff you out, like drug sniffing dogs. It was so fun.
That's
So that
awesome.
was a really cool activation. Yeah, but we always had like just great bands and great DJs and just really great community, and and
Yeah,
and being able to give back was really really important to me. And we always would do 3 things. So we always had a joint rolling competition every year. Joint rolling competition was always, I remember, always sponsored by Smoking Rolling Papers, and the winner would get like a huge box of like a lifetime supply of rolling papers.
awesome.
So we would always do that, and then we always had a bong clearing competition with the biggest bong that I could find in the catalog assortment that year. So we would, it was just like tacky. Somebody was I remember I did it one year. I was like, "I'm never doing this again." I had to, like, sit on a couch for, like, 3 hours. But, and then at 4:20 on the dot, we always had a band that played. And then sadly, my good friend Rafa Dean, who was the band leader every year for, like, 16 years, he passed away. So my
Yeah,
friend Zoe took over for him. But yeah, so we would always do "Legalize It," like the song "Legalize It," every 420 on 420 every year.
yeah,
And it was just such a great event, like, so great. I
yeah.
always enjoyed our 420 parties, rain, shine. I remember having a party and it was, like, raining so hard tarps, and all the tarps are full of water, and my staff had to with like broomsticks and like take out all the water. But man, we still had like 1,000 people come through that day and just smoke out the place.
Incredible.
It was really great, great memories.
What were some of the big shifts that happened when legalization happened at
Oh,
Hotbox? Yeah, what was
oh,
like
all kinds. Yeah, it was
yeah.
hard. It was
Mhm.
hard, but I'm a trooper.
Yeah, yeah.
And I always figure out a way. So the hardest thing was actually not really the smoking thing, because I 2 things. So the smoking thing was hard because they wouldn't let us have the patio anymore.
Mhm.
So what we did in protest is that everybody that would come would just smoke their joints right up front,
Right.
and then I encouraged, people to write in and ask why there's so many people smoking weed on the street, and why can't they just go sit back where they were and where it was like much more comfortable.
Mhm.
So after doing that for a while, we actually ended up talking to I worked really hard on this, but I worked with our city councilor, and I worked with the Department of Health, like Toronto Public Health,
Nice.
and we came up with an arrangement where we would have to stop selling food, and
Mm.
then we could just have that as like a part of our, like, it's not really a part of the store, and we were just a store. So we had to give up a huge revenue stream, right? Like we could no longer sell food or drinks or snacks.
Yeah.
So we were losing, that's like $2,000 a day.
Yeah,
And
wow.
that was a big hit. But another really big hit, which seems like you don't even think about it, once they moved vaporizers, dry or cannabis vaporizers into the same selling class as an e-cigarette, I had to open an entire new store that was a vape shop. I was forced to sell nicotine, which was insane, I thought.
Yeah,
Um, and in order to sell dryer vaporizers, which were a huge part of our business
yeah.
because we had built our business selling dryer vaporizers. We launched some of the biggest vaporizer companies like through the hot box by setting them up on the tables, and we never let people smoke inside. It was
Mhm.
always a smoke-free lounge, which sounds weird for like 20 years ago, right? When we could actually just even light up a cigarette if we wanted to back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Of the day. But yeah, so that was really hard. And I remember going to Toronto City Council, and I was the only cannabis lobbyist out of a sea of e-cigarette lobbyists. And I got booed because I went up to the microphone and I said, "This is ridiculous. Like I'm being forced to sell nicotine products, which I find disgusting and harmful, and all these." And I was removed. Like, anyways, those were the days, yeah. So
Big tobacco.
those were the 2 hardest things, I think,
Mhm.
about legalization, and then the lottery thing,
Right.
that was really hard because I'd taken on investors. There were people that were like counting on us being able to sell cannabis out of our secondary store. And like we had been planning for this for so long. We did everything that we could, we did everything that was needed to like make sure that we were good. And then they just put it through a lottery. And obviously, out of a million people who like gamed the system, I didn't win. And then I didn't have $5 million to pay some lottery winner like everybody else. And, so I ended up just selling the company because there was just no point
Mhm.
of, it's an uphill battle at that point, and I was
Right.
tired.
But then that's
Yeah.
when you went to OCS and I guess continued on your entrepreneurial journey. And just also I want to talk about being a woman in the space and how that informs your brands now and how things have kind of changed since the beginning.
Yeah. Which one do you want to talk about first? Being a woman?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So, there were when I started, there were 3 things about me that were totally different than everybody else. One, I was a woman. Yeah, that's like 50% of the population. I was probably the only woman in cannabis,
Yeah.
but I was also 20 years old and disabled. So you add those 3 things up and it
Right.
becomes like a very difficult battle. And out of those 3 things that you would think, one would be harder than the other, being young was actually the hardest because trying to get terms of the company or trying to get a bank account or trying
Right.
to prove to someone that you understand business somewhat, that's the hardest part is
Right.
being young. Then came the being woman, then the being disabled.
Right.
But when it comes to being a woman in the space, I was always the only one, right? Like you're talking 25 years ago, it was highly illegal, right? Like it was the same as selling heroin essentially. So there were no women in the space, and I had to just learn how to just hold my head up and just be tough as nails, and just, my biggest thing is like I just never like made myself sexy, or you know what I mean, until
Mhm.
later on when I could.
Yeah.
But I just always tried to be like really smart, and it's like talk to this,
Yeah.
not to this. Like my breast or vagina don't have thoughts. I
Yeah.
do. So
That's awesome. Yeah.
so that's what matters, right? Like it's not like one thing is going to change how I think, right? Um, but and as the time evolved, I always say, when medical cannabis like MMPR, MMAR came in, and all the dispensaries started to pop open, that's when you really started to see more women
Mm.
feel more empowered. Women had a lot more to lose by coming into the cannabis industry as it was, because it wasn't an industry. It was just an underground marketplace, right? There weren't many women like me that were willing to put 20 pounds of weed in their bags, go meet some dude, and come back home with $12,000. in their bag in cash. Like there
Yeah,
weren't that many women that were willing to do that. I was okay with it, but
yeah,
most women, not really.
yeah,
Um, and you started to see the real creativity and innovation of women just doing what they know what to do already. So you saw a lot of like topicals come into the market, a lot of just like just really neat like just neat accessories and just some really cool shit, and then some
mhm,
really cool retail concepts as well that were popping out during that period of like the dispensary days, I like to call it, pre Project Claudia.
yeah, yeah.
And it was really great to see. So I worked with a lot of women that were just creating really cool shit, and because I was in a small store, independent store, I could just buy from whoever. So I really got to support a lot of different people, not just women, just different people in the space that were coming up. It was really exciting. And then once legalization came, you had a whole different situation where two male dominated cultures all of a sudden united into one new industry. So you had Bay Street, which is very male dominated. Like every time I still talk to those guys, and 90% of them are like, "I'm a little girl," I'm just like, ugh, like you literally have no idea what you're saying. But it's okay, they're getting better. And then the cannabis marketplace that existed, the legacy marketplace that existed, which again, very male dominated, very macho, very tough. So you've got these two very like, "Roar," it's almost like two like silverbacks like meeting in the jungle to like create an industry. And then here I am, I'm like, I know stuff,
Yeah,
I can do things, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah. All right. We'll talk to Chad over here. He's got a nice haircut. He worked at Loblaws, you know?"
yeah,
Um, okay. So, but that's been my experience, and I always feel like, we always have to work 5 times as hard
mhm,
to achieve half the recognition that,
mhm.
or a third even of the recognition that a man would, like, so
And
yeah,
like
that's
having to
one of the
prove
things that I'm
yourself.
trying to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's one of the things that I'm trying to fight. It's like, no matter how smart, how successful, how, like, innovative we are, like, how much we know about stuff, like, Chad from Loblaws will always get the job ahead of us, right? It's true, I'm sure you've had it happen to you, right? And now that I have a child too, it's really interesting. I've had 2 bosses now that were like, don't use your child as an excuse, or, focus on your job. Don't be, like, you
Mhm.
don't need to leave early. I'm like, yeah, but if I don't leave, if you're gonna book me till 5 p.m. and my kid is in daycare and I don't show up at 5 to pick her up, she's just gonna be stuck in daycare. Like I gotta pick up my kid, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a really interesting thing that I've never had to deal with before as a woman, is
Mhm,
having a child
mhm.
and working in cannabis. So I'm very outspoken about my kid, and I'm just like, I make lots of jokes about her. Pretty sure that people know that she's around, she's a part of the gig, right? Like
Yeah.
she's, you get me, you get her.
Well,
So
that's
yeah,
wonderful though. That's great, and I feel like,
yeah,
yeah, that's one of like the liabilities of being a woman is like pregnancy and childcare and all that stuff. But I mean, I feel like that's changing
yeah.
too with like pat leave. I think that that's kind of cool and revolutionary in a lot of ways. And just recognizing like the man's role in that if he's present or
Yeah.
they're present, and also just but you have so much credibility behind you, like so many years, decades
Mhm.
of proven like your proven track record and just all these incredible jobs. And so like I just feel like you've just accomplished so much. It's really inspiring
I
for sure.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask if you have anything for other entrepreneurs trying to get into space, like advice for them or yeah.
I always just say, do what you do. Don't try and like reinvent yourself just to be in the cannabis space. If you were an accountant yesterday at Joe Schmo's accounting, you're still an accountant today, and cannabis needs accounting. So like cannabis is a regular industry, just like everything else. It has the same exact jobs as any CPG,
Yeah.
any manufacturing, right? And even like right? So any of the jobs that you would have had in the outside world, and anything that you're really great at doing, don't reinvent the wheel. Focus on what you are really great at. focus on who you are as a personal brand and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses, right? And just because you work in weed doesn't really mean anything. This is just a job now.
For
It's
sure.
not like the old days where you were doing something really special. It's
For sure.
literally just a LinkedIn posting. Yeah.
And then, and so for 420, what are you celebrating? Like, what is the one thing in cannabis in Canada that you really are excited about and that
Yeah.
celebrate today?
I think it's kind of a weird time right now, like for the industry, in terms of, there's a lot of debt, there's a lot of renewal, there's a lot of people going under and then coming back from the ashes. And I think the first 5 years were a learning curve of people understanding what works, what doesn't work, where are the kinks in the system. And I think the next 5 years, you're going to see a lot of not even smaller players, because some of the bigger players have had to really do a lot of restructuring as well. But I think you're just going to see a more dynamic, more restructured marketplace with a lot, like just a lot of really cool innovation. Like I work at the bottom of the supply chain during the day, right? Where like I just sell literally biomass. So I'm giving you
Right.
like the starting material to create whatever it is that you want with it, right? It can be anything that you want it to be. So just listening to like what people are utilizing and how they're, innovating and the brands that are coming out. Like there's some really exciting stuff in the works for cannabis consumers, and the quality is really good. And
Hmm.
I just think it's like a phoenix from rising from the ashes. So it's going to be a really exciting next chapter for the
Yeah.
cannabis industry and cannabis consumers as well. Yeah.
This just kind of popped into my mind. I know that you were talking about extracts being your bag, but how do you feel about the low THC products that are making headlines and coming to market?
In the States, it's a big thing, right? Like
Yeah.
we're always going to be a few years behind some of the more mature markets, but
Mhm.
once consumers reach there, I think we'll get there. And the reality is 30% flour isn't like a thing,
Mhm.
right? Unless you're boosting it
Mhm.
or fudging it,
Mhm.
like it's just not a thing. Like it's a natural product. It's just not a thing. Like you have to give it like a serious amount of newts to get it to like that percentage. And I think people have come to also realize that like THC isn't the end all be all.
Mhm.
It's interesting when I went to Grass on the Hill in Ottawa for legalization and did some lobbying there. And I kept telling, the people at ISET and Health Canada, had many conversations with them about packaging. And I said, the reason that we're having this like race to the top with THC is because the only thing a consumer can see on the packaging in terms of like product information is numbers. So they're buying it like they're buying milk. And I said to the guys that I said, I was like, imagine going to the grocery store and all the tomatoes were covered and all you could see was vitamin C percentages.
Mhm.
What would you buy? And
Mhm.
they're like, true. So I recommended that they allow for a clear section in the packaging for flour so people could actually see the product inside.
Yeah.
And if you read the recommendations, my recommendation made it in
Really?
to the review, and I didn't even put it in like officially. I just
Yeah.
went and had meetings. But sometimes having like conversations with not even like politicians, but with like staffers and people who write recommendations. And instead of complaining about stuff not working, you give them a solution and a reason and explain why it's needed, and then change gets made. It's magic. You don't complain. It's magical. Nobody likes a complainer, everybody likes a problem solver. But anyways, THC, low THC, I think that's what's happening. I think people are just understanding that it's not milk,
Mhm.
and it's not scientific mumbo jumbo in the package.
I'm
Doesn't mean
excited for
much.
it because I'm excited for the variety. That's you know what I mean? Yeah.
Exactly. It's interesting. Compound Genetics launched in Canada. I didn't even know that they did. I was like, oh, this is cool. So I ended up buying Compound Genetics. I didn't even read like anything. I didn't read the product description, THC levels, nothing. And
Yeah.
it was a balanced product. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's really interesting that Compound Genetics, like one of the most exciting like genetic brands in the world, came to Canada
Yeah.
and released a balanced.
Yeah.
Interesting, eh?
Sick. Yeah. Anything
Tells
else?
you something.
Anything else you want to add?
That's I could go on for hours,
I
but you know,
know, I know. I know. I don't wanna end
it's
it, but I
good.
feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, we should be
Yeah.
responsible interviewees here.
Time. Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, and so nice to chat with you and see you again, and hopefully I'll see you sometime this spring.
Absolutely. Happy 420.
Happy 420. Bye, Abby.